This is truly going to be a very special evening, and it's an evening that you're very fortunate to experience. I'm very grateful to see so many students here. And I'd like to ask our students to raise their hands. I just want to see how many students we have. I mean, this is just incredible, incredible. Carroll College earlier this fall was rated as the #1 regional college. But to me, a ranking that was even more powerful is that we were rated as the #1 undergraduate teaching institution in the West. And what's happening tonight, which you will experience tonight with our speakers, the power of the human spirit, is truly a teaching moment. It's a learning moment. And it's a moment that would not be open to you tonight, to our students, to our community and friends, without the generosity of someone who truly cares about this institution, who believes in this institution and makes a difference. And that man's name is John Runda. And John, would you please stand? Let's give John a tremendous hand. John is not only a benefactor of this institution, but he's also served on the faculty of this institution, and he's one who is truly and highly respected. So, John and Trish, thank you for this opportunity, and it's my pleasure now to welcome John to the podium.
Just a few comments as to how this night came about. About 6 months ago, I received a book in the mail, The Sun Does Shine, and it was sent to me by my now fiancée, Tricia, who's with us, and she had learned of Mr. Hinton from a television show that she had seen, and she knew I would be interested in his cause because of my background in parole and other aspects of sociology. So I immediately felt that his story had such great value that it needed to be shared. It needed to be shared with all of us in Helena and specifically Carroll College. So in order to bring him here, it took the cooperation, support of a number of people on campus. Patrick Harris, Chris Fuller, John Reese, Eric Hall, Dr. Jamie Dolan, Patty White, of course our president. And so for all of these people, we are most thankful. And one thing I hope we pick up tonight, that we learn tonight, is that Mr. Hinton is truly a current day Job. You will find out, if you do not already know much about him, from the video we'll see, and then of course from his presentation, that here's a man, a good man, who's always been a good man, who had everything taken from him, almost his life. And he endured. His faith never wavered, although he will tell you that he was quite angry with God. But his faith never wavered. And that's what brought him through 30 years on death row for a crime he did not commit. And so I hope we sit back and appreciate that. Others have compared him really to a modern day Mandela as well. 30 years of incarceration because of the color of his skin for something he didn't do. So with that, Jamie, if you want to continue with the program, but thank you very much.
We are truly honored to have Mr. Anthony Ray Hinton here in Helena and at Carroll College tonight. This is a special opportunity for our community. I think it's quite in line with the mission of our college. So we're enormously grateful to Mr. Hinton for coming all this way, and to Dr. John Runda for bringing him here. Anthony Ray Hinton was released in April 2015 after spending, as John said, 30 years on Alabama's death row for a crime he did not commit. He was released with the help of the Equal Justice Justice Initiative, of which he is now an employee. He serves as the EJI's community educator and travels both nationally and internationally to speak about his experiences. One of the longest-serving death row prisoners in Alabama history, and among the longest-serving condemned prisoners to be freed after presenting evidence of innocence, Mr. Hinton is the 152nd person exonerated from death row since 1983. 30 years ago, Mr. Hinton was arrested and charged with 2 capital murders based solely on the assertion that a revolver taken from his mother's home was the gun used in both murders and in a third uncharged crime. EJI attorneys engaged 3 of the nation's top firearm examiners who testified in 2002 that the revolver could not be matched to crime evidence. State prosecutors never questioned the new findings, but nonetheless refused to re-examine the case or concede error. After 12 more years of litigation, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the lower courts and a new trial was granted. The judge finally dismissed the charges after prosecutors said that scientists at the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences tested the evidence and confirmed that the crime bullets cannot be matched to the Hinton weapon. Anthony Ray Hinton was released, finally. He has spoken at dozens of universities and conferences over the last 2.5 years of his freedom, and is an incredibly compelling speaker and powerful advocate for changes to the criminal justice system. His inspirational memoir, The Sun Does Shine, How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row, was released in March of this year, and in June, Oprah chose this book for her book club. There are copies of the book available in the back for purchase if you're interested. As part of his visit to Carroll College, Mr. Hinton graciously visited my class this afternoon, Sociology 200, Social Problems. Amongst other things, he asked the students to consider what justice really means and how each of us can contribute to a more just society. These matters are as important today as they ever have been. Through his sharing at Carroll College, Mr. Hinton is helping us live our mission-centered values as we journey toward justice and work for the greater good of our communities. We'll start tonight with a short video presentation about the author and his book before welcoming Mr. Hinton to the stage.
For 30 years, Anthony Ray Hinton was president of the court.
Prosecution saying didn't take my life from me.
58 years old, Hinton lived more than half his life inside a cage, home and correctional facility in southern Alabama. Today, he's seeing and experiencing things for the first time in decades.
Oh my goodness.
A party in his honor, hosted by the Equal Justice Initiative, led by attorney Brian Stevenson and his team of attorneys, who fought for decades to win Hinton's freedom.
Thank you for giving me my life back. Just being here as a team. You say that you got me on some man off there.
His nightmare began in 1985. Ronald Reagan was president, Back to the Future was the box office hit, and Under the Cover of Darkness, 2 Birmingham restaurant managers were shot dead at closing time, just months apart. A third victim, another man who survived the shooting, and helped identify 29-year-old Anthony Ray Hinton as the killer.
You're a free man. What does it mean? Everything. You never think about the freedom which is taken away from you. Good put a price tag on it. Throw it all back on that.
So much about the world has changed, but the greatest still is a world without his mother. She died while he was locked away.
They killed people, Lord. I'm ashamed, Lord. I'm proud that that's supposed to love my life.
He goes back to the home they shared together, now abandoned.
You know, I hate to see it in this shape.
It's his first time there since the night it was all taken away. This is the room where Hinton's mother kept her .38 caliber revolver. Police said it was the murder weapon. Hinton's court-appointed public defender hired a supposed ballistics expert to dispute the prosecution's claim about the murder weapon. A persuasive expert, he was not.
So this ballistics expert was wrong. In one eye, yes, that's correct. He had asked how to turn on the machine. He couldn't see it. I couldn't do a thing about the years, but I could control my joy.
53 inmates were executed at Holman while Hinton was on death row.
My dogs remember the BC, so many people that I got to know. Be executed.
He languished in prison for years before his case reached appeals court.
Had never been so convinced of someone's innocence than I had in Mr. Hinton's case. No one asked.
Judge Sudell Cobb was one of those appellate court judges who believed the story.
There was no incriminating evidence. He didn't have anything from the robbery, there were no fingerprints.
This is extremely unusual. His appeal was adopted, but his team kept fighting.
And we exhausted every state court appeal, and the United States Supreme Court finally intervened.
The result was a new trial that Ray Hinton had been waiting for. But just a few weeks ago, the state of Alabama dropped the case after a new look at the evidence could not match the bullets to the gun. And Hinton was released.
Since I've been locked up 30 years, privilege kills the soul. I cannot hate because my Bible teaches me not to hate. I've seen hate is worse. What would it profit me to hate? I want to know there is a hope. You see, I will smoke. He will smoke. Yes, he will. He can't be.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hinton to the stage.
I've learned in life not to try to recognize all the people that made it possible for me to be here. You don't call out one name and miss someone else's name because they'll be mad at you for the rest of their life. And I just want to thank everyone that played a part in reaching out to me to bring me here tonight. That film will not even begin to show and tell you of the 30 years of pure hell that I went through. I wish I could tell you tonight that the state of Alabama made an honest mistake. You have no idea how bad I would love to tell you that the state that I love made an honest mistake. I wish I could look you in the eye and tell you that race played no part in me going to death row for 30 years. But if I told you that race didn't play a part in it, I would be telling you a lie. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story, and this story, no name has been changed to protect the innocent. This is a true story. This is a story about how the judicial system that some of you, if not all of you, may think that we have a perfect judicial system. But tonight, I hope this story will at least get you to thinking and get you to talking to each other. On a hot day in July, and I mean this had to be the hottest day in July. And I don't know how many of you ever been in Alabama, but I'm going to give you some free advice. Do not come to Alabama in July. It's far too hot. But my mother had made some of her lemonade, and I went inside and poured myself a glass, and my mother looked at me and she said, "Are you going to revive it tonight?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." We say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, in the South out of respect for our elders. And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm going." I got that glass of lemonade and went outside. About 15 minutes later, I came back and was putting my glass in the sink, and my mother was still in the kitchen. She said, "What time does revival start tonight?" And I said, 7 o'clock, Mom. She said, well, you got time to go out there and cut that grass. I looked at my mom and I gave her that baby look that had worked so many times before, but today it just wasn't working. And I looked at my mother and I said, Mama, I promise you, I will cut that grass tomorrow. My mom looked at me and she said, I'm trying my best to see how did you get it. You'll cut the grass tomorrow out of me telling you to go cut the grass. And she gave me that look only she could give me, and I knew exactly what she meant. And she said, boy, you better get out there and cut that grass. I goes outside and I fire up the lawnmower. 25 minutes into cutting grass, I just happened to look up. There stood two white gentlemen that I never seen before. I cut the lawnmower off and I said, can I help you? One of them said, we're looking for Anthony Ray Hinton. I said, that would be me again. How can I help you? They identified themselves as two detectives from the Birmingham Police Department. And I said, okay, well, how can I help you? They said, we have a warrant for your arrest. I said, my arrest for what? He said, we'll explain that to you later, but right now we want you to put your hands behind your back. I complied. I put my hands behind my back. They put the handcuff on me and proceeded to put me in the police car. And I said, hold up. At least allow me the opportunity to go in and tell my mother I'm being arrested for something. One of the detectives said, we can't let you go back inside. And we began to argue about 2 minutes. And finally the other detective said, let him go in and tell his mother he's being arrested. I goes in, I don't say a word, I just show my mother the handcuffing. Like any good mother, she began to scream and holler, what are those handcuffs doing on my baby? One of the detectives said, take him outside while I stay in here and talk to his mother. A few minutes later, he came back outside and we proceeded to go to the county jail. On our way there, the detective turned around and asked me, did I own a firearm? I said, no, I don't own a firearm. He said, do your mother own a firearm? And I said, yes. He said, what kind does she have? And I told him an old 38. They dropped me off at a substation, went back to my mother's house, and she gave them the old 38. As they picked me up, we proceeded to go to the county jail. And on our way there, I must ask this detective at least 50 times, why am I being arrested? Never would respond. And as they drove a little further, I asked again. I said, detective, why are you arrested? And this seemed to set the detective off that wasn't driving. He turned around and he said, you want to know why we arrested you? I said, yes. He said, we're charging you for first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnapping, first-degree attempted murder. I said, oh, I haven't done any of that. You got the wrong person. He said, let me tell you something right now. I don't care whether you did or didn't do it, but I want you to know that I'm going to make sure that you found guilty. I said, for something that I didn't do? He said, you must have a hearing problem. Didn't I just tell you I don't care whether you did it or didn't do it? And as he drove just a little far, he turned around and he said, by the way, there's 5 things that are going to convict you. Would you like to know what they are? And I said, yes. He said, number 1, you're black. Number 2, a white man is going to say you shot him. Whether you shot him or not, I don't care. He said, believe me, I do not care. He said, number 3, you're going to have a white prosecutor. Number 4, you're going to have a white judge. And number 5, you're going to have an all-white jury. And he said, do you know what that spells? He looked at me and he repeated the word conviction, 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 conviction. And as we got to the police station, they put me in this holding cell for about 2.5 hours, and finally the detective came and I said, detective, if you don't mind, would you tell me what date and what time this crime took place? He went in his folder and gave me the date and the time, and I said, detective, if you're telling the truth. I said, thank God, I was at work that particular day and that particular time. And I said, thank you, Jesus, my supervisor happened to be white. I said, here's his number. Here's the address. You can go out and check for yourself. And he left in about 4.5 hours, 5 hours later. He came back and he said, I have good news and bad news. He said, the good news is your alibi checks out. We no longer going to charge you for first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnapping, first-degree attempted murder. He said, but we have decided that now we're going to charge you with 2 counts, first-degree capital murder. I said, but detective, I haven't killed anyone. He said, do you remember me telling you on the way here that I didn't care whether you did it or didn't do it? He said, that still holds effect for these 2 new charges. And as I began to talk to the detective, he looked at me and he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I truly believe that you didn't do it. He said, but y'all is always taking up for one another. Take this rap for your homeboy. And with tears coming down my eyes, as a detective, there's not a homeboy in this world that I would take a case for like this. I sit in jail for 1 year and a half. Finally, I go before a judge, and the judge read the charges off, asks me, can I afford an attorney? I said, no, Your Honor, I cannot. He called one out of the back of his courtroom, told him that he wanted him to represent me on 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. Without even asking me my name, the attorney said, I did not go to law school to do pro bono work. I looked at the attorney and I said, would it make a difference to you if I told you that I was innocent? The attorney looked at me and he said, the problem with that statement, all of y'all is always doing something, then saying you didn't do it. This is the attorney that I had believed that would represent me to the best of his ability. And as we went to trial, they found me guilty of 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. The judge that day stood up proudly and said, Anthony Ray Hinton, you have been found guilty by our jury, your peers. And it is the order of this court that I sentence you to death. And that judge had the audacity to say, may God have mercy on your soul. The prosecution ran out that day and told the media that the worst killer that ever walked the street in Alabama was off the streets. But it wasn't true. And he knew it wasn't true. And on December the 17th, 1986, I went to Helena Correctional Facility, where they housed death row inmates. For the next 3 years, I did not speak to another human being for 3 years. When my mother would come, I didn't even say, hello, mother, nothing. Somehow, for whatever reason, I had got into this dark hole, and all the hatred that I could muster up was inside of me, and all I could think about was, how could I escape? I didn't want to escape to be on the run. I wanted to escape and choke the life out of those men that lied on me and put me on death row simply because I was black. 3 years, the very thing that I thought was keeping me alive, I learned that that was killing me as well. Going into the 4th year, I woke up to the sound of a grown man crying. A man that I had lived by for 3 years and never thought to ask him his name. But when I heard this man crying, my mother had taught me compassion. My mother told me that no matter what one does in life, he or she deserves compassion. And it was that compassion that made me holler out through the bars and ask this man, was something wrong? It took him a moment to reply, and he finally said, I just got word that my mother passed. I told him how sorry I was to hear that, and then I realized how grateful I was that my mother was still alive. I told the man that if there's anything I can do, please let me know. And I laid back down, and exactly at 2:45, I woke up. As I sit on this bunk, I realized in order for me to survive where I was at, I had to leave. I knew that I couldn't leave physically, so I decided that I would somehow have to leave mentally. It was as though my body looked at me, and I told my body that I had to leave. It wasn't until my body looked like it said, do you promise to come back? I told my body that I had to come back to check on the case, and I promised that I would be back. The moment my body gave me permission to leave, of all the places in the world, I wanted to go to England and see Queen Elizabeth. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't ask me why a 29-year-old black male wanted to go see Queen Elizabeth. I don't know. But in my mind, that's what I wanted to see. And in my mind, once I got to England, I told the guards that I was there to see the Queen. The guards goes in and tells the Queen that I was there. The Queen says, send him in. I goes in, I introduce myself to the Queen. We sit down, we talks about Prince Charles, Prince William, Prince Harry, and of course, the tragedy of Prince Di. And the Queen realized that we had been talking for at least 30 minutes and she hadn't offered me anything to drink. The Queen stood up. She said, Mr. Hinton, would you like some tea? And I told the Queen I would love some tea. And she said, what would you like in your tea? And I told her a spot of lemon. She goes out and she tells the butler to bring this lemon, and I squeeze it in my tea. We sit down and we talk some more. In my mind. Now that I realize that I can escape in my mind, I decided that I would do something that I made myself a promise at 12 that I would never do. I decided that I would marry. I didn't just marry anybody. I married the beautiful and talented Halle Berry. In my mind, Halle Berry and I stayed married for 15 long, beautiful years. And if there's a such thing as the perfect wife, Halle Berry never did ask for anything. She always said, yes, dear, okay, dear, whatever you want to do. And then, in year 16, the Department of Correction did something that it had never done for their inmates. They decided that they would show us a movie. And the movie was Speed. For the first time in my life, I'm looking at this movie, and there's the beautiful actress, Sandra Bullock. As I looked at Sandra Bullock, in my mind, I'm looking at Helen. I look at Helena, I look at Sandra Bullock. It was as though I was at a tennis match. But in my mind, I know I got to build my nerves up to tell Helena some bad news. Watching this woman drive this bus. And I'm thinking, if a woman can drive a bus this good, imagine what she could do with a getaway car. Finally, I looked at Helena. And I said, Helena, with my deepest sympathy, I'm going to have to divorce you. I'm going to marry Sandra Bullock. And true to her word, Hannah said, okay to you. Sandra Bullock and I got married in my mind. And then there was this guard standing at my door calling me. He said, Anthony, I've been calling you for 20 minutes. I said, I'm sorry, I was gone. What is it? He said, you have a legal visit. I said, but I don't have an attorney. The state of Alabama don't give you an attorney during post-conviction. He said, well, somebody's out there pretending to be a lawyer. Get dressed and go see who it is. I goes out there, and there's this lawyer from Boston. I asked this lawyer, who sent you where from Boston? He tell me a man by the name of Brian Stevenson. He tell me how great Brian Stevenson is. He tell me how good Brian Stevenson is. And I said, did you say you from Boston? He said, yes. I said, had Brian Stevenson, this great Brian Stevenson, checked with me before he sent you, Brian Stevenson would have known that I am a beloved Yankee fan. And there's no way a Yankee fan and a Boston fan could ever do anything together. I said, but for your sake, I'm willing to put my personal feelings aside and let you work on my case. And for 3 years, this lawyer from Boston would come back every year and tell me what he had done and what he was trying to do. And in the 4th year, he came back and he said, Anthony, I think I can get you a life without parole. I said, get who a life without parole? He said, you. I said, life without parole is for guilty people. It's not for innocent people. I said, there is no way I would ever stand up and plead guilty to something that I didn't do. I said, you know, all of my life, my mom taught me to stand up for what I believe in. I said, there's no way that I would stand up and plead guilty. I said, let me tell you something that you may understand and you may not. I said, when I was 12 years old, my mother told me, if you're man enough to bend down and pick up a rock, and if you're man enough to throw that rock, you should be man enough to say, you throw that rock. I said, this is one rock I did not throw. And therefore, I can never stand up and plead guilty. I said, if the state of Alabama is hell-bent on executing me for a crime they know that I didn't commit, so be it. I said, we all must die at some point. I'm not ready to die, and I surely don't want to die for something that I didn't do. But if I have to die, I said, there's nothing I can do about it. I looked at the lawyer and I said, thank you for everything that you tried to do. I said, but I need a lawyer that believes in me. I need a lawyer that is willing to go to jail for me if necessary. I said, but the fact that you're trying to get me a life without parole tells me that you don't believe in me. I said, and since you don't believe in me, I have no choice but to fire you. And just as I said, fire you, something in my mind said, you got to be the dumbest person in the world. You just fired the only lawyer that you had. And just as that thought into my mind, another thought said, you did the right thing. Always stand up for what you believe in. And as I was going back to my cell, the guard was watching TV. I asked this guard, what was he watching? He told me a man by the name of Brian Stevenson, and I said, oh, that's the man. I asked the guard, could I stand there and listen to him? And he said, yes. Brian Stevenson was talking about why we don't need a death penalty in this country. And for whatever reason, I knew at that moment, that is the lawyer that I needed to represent me. I goes to my cell and I write Mr. Stevenson a letter. I tell him, like any other inmate, I know you receive letters, and I know you all get letters that they didn't do it. I said, but I truly didn't do this crime. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I would like to ask you to become my lawyer, but before you say yes or no, I ask you to read my transcript. And if you find one thing in my transcript that points to my guilt, do not worry about becoming my lawyer. Do not send me another lawyer. I am perfectly willing to die for a crime that I didn't commit. About 3 months later, I get a reply from Mr. Stevenson saying that he would read my transcript. 5 months later, I get a letter saying that he had made provision to come and visit me with the person. True to his word, he came, and the moment I shook this man's hand, I cannot explain it other than to tell you. The moment I shook this man's hand, I knew that God had sent me his best Lord. We sit down and we talked about our childhood, and finally we got to my case. I said, Mr. Stevenson, the state of Alabama is lying. I said, the state of Alabama, no, that is not the murder weapon. I said, if no two guns is alike, I need you to do me a favor. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I need you to hire a ballistic expert. And he looked at me and he said, well, I was going to do that anyway. I said, no, Mr. Stevenson. I said, I'm not explaining myself. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I need you to hire a white man. And I need this white man to be from the South. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I have lived in the South all my life. And I know exactly what you have to do in the South. I said, Mr. Stevenson, you could go out. You could get the best white female in the country. Her word is no good on the witness stand in the South. I said, Mr. Stevenson, and it definitely cannot be a person of color. It has to be a southern white man. I said, but Mr. Stevenson, I need him to be the best of the best. I need him to believe in the death penalty. But above all of that, I need this man to tell the truth. Mr. Stevenson left that day, and about 5 months later, I got word to call my attorney. I called Mr. Stevenson, and he said, Ray, I found 3 other world-renowned experts. He said, they only testify for the prosecution. He said, but I have agreed to testify for you. I said, Mr. Stevenson, did you remember to ask them would they just tell the truth? He said, they said that they would tell exactly what the evidence showed. I said, Mr. Stevenson, if you can hire those 3 experts, hire those 3 experts. 2 of them lived in Texas, 1 of them lived in Virginia. They came at 3 separate occasions, they did their testing, and all 3 tried to manipulate the gun to make the gun match, and the gun still wouldn't match. We takes our finding to the Attorney General, a man by the name of Troy King. He refused. Took it to a man by the name of Bill Pryor. He refused. And for his refusal, George W. Bush made him a federal lifetime appointment. Then we went to the 3rd Attorney General, a man by the name of Luther String. He too refused to take 1 hour and re-examine the bullets. With that, Mr. Stevenson came to me and he said, the judges in Alabama is not going to do the right thing. I need to take your case to the United States Supreme Court. He said, but I need to inform you that if the United States Supreme Court rule against you, the Alabama will kill you within 1 year. Well, I had lost my mother. And I said, Mr. Stevenson, take my case before the United States Supreme Court. We filed, and 2 years later, the United States Supreme Court did something that it have never done in the history of the court. All 9 judges ruled in my favor. All 9 judges said, Alabama, you have to retry him.
Amen.
We go before the trial judge. The prosecution stand up and say, Your Honor, it is with great sadness that we inform this court that we have lost the gun in question. The judge look at him and say, I'm going to give you 3 months to find the gun. I expect you to be back here. We goes back 3 months later. The prosecution stand up and say, Your Honor, it is with great sadness to inform this court that we found the gun, but we have lost the bullets. The judge said, you telling me you first lost the gun, now you don't lost the bullets? He said, yes, you. She said, I'm giving you, once again, 3 months. While we were thinking they was looking for the bullets, the prosecution had called one of his own experts that testified 30 years ago to come back and re-examine the bullets. He comes back and he is quoted as saying, the bullets do not match the way they matched 30 years ago. But I promise you, those bullets matched the same 30 years ago like they did 30 years ago. There was never a match. They knew that those bullets didn't match. But Alabama was going to kill me simply because they had the means to do it. The state of Alabama didn't realize 2 things. The state of Alabama didn't know that God was going to send me his best lawyer. And the state of Alabama didn't realize that I had a personal relationship with God. The state of Alabama notified the judge that they was dropping all charges against me. The state of Alabama had every intention of executing an innocent man. The state of Alabama was going to execute me in your name. the state of Alabama would have executed me without even thinking about it. And I told some of you today that I come to Montana. I come to ask you a profound question. The state of Alabama was seeking justice of the highest. That was my life. Now, since the state of Alabama dropped all charges, I need somebody tonight to stand up and tell me, where do I get my justice? I lived in a hole for 30 years, and no one in Alabama ever had the decency to say, I'm sorry. Is my life not worth I'm sorry? I need somebody. Because every day I ask myself, what did I do that they would come and get me and put me in a hole for 30 years, knowing that I was innocent and not even say, I'm sorry? What kind of justice system do we have that an innocent man can sit in a 5x7 for 30 long years? What are we saying to our young people that we allow this to go on, not just in Alabama, but it goes on in every state in the United States? Today, I've been free for 3 years. Today, to this day, no one in Alabama have come up and said, Mr. Hinton, I am truly sorry. But that's okay. You see, if they was to tell me they were sorry, I don't know whether or not I would even believe it. But I want you to know something. That I forgave the men that did this to me. I didn't forgive them because they emailed me, called me, and wrote me. I forgave them not because so they could sleep good at night. I forgave them so I could sleep good at night. That old house that you saw was tore down and broken down through generous donation. I was able to fix it up. And I wish you could see it now. And I had enough money left over. And I decided that I would treat myself with a king-size bed. I didn't just buy any king-size bed. I bought me a California king-size bed. And every now and then I look at this king-size bed and I ask myself, what was you thinking? Buying this old big bed. Well, you see, I had imagined sleeping straight. I had imagined just stretching out in this big bed. But for 3 years, I haven't been able to stretch out in this bed. I cannot fall asleep until I bring my knees up to my chest. What I want you to understand, that 3 years will not undo what 30 years have done to me. Every day I have the ability to shower as long as I want, how many times I want, but I find myself showering every other day just as though I'm still on death row. Every morning I am up at 2:45 expecting breakfast, because for 30 years they woke us up to feed us breakfast at 3 a.m. I forgive those that did this to me. I forgive them because I truly believe that if I truly want to be free, the only way any of us can ever be free is that we must forgive. Yes, the human side of me wanted to choke the life out. But when I allowed the spiritual side to take over, I came to, as I would call it, my good senses. And then I came across a scripture. Mark 11, 24, 25, and 26 says, what things soever you desire, when you pray, believe in them, and you shall have them. Jesus said, as you stand at the altar asking for forgiveness, if you're not willing to forgive, how do you expect his heavenly Father to forgive you. I knew that I had to forgive those men in order for me to be free. Every night, no matter where I'm at 10:30, I go outside and I look up and I try to find the moon and the stars. Because for 30 years, you don't know how many times I asked God to just let me see the moon and the star one more time. But more important, what type of system we have. The system is bad and broken. I told somebody today that the system is not blind the way you think it's blind. She has this masquerade on and she can see. She knows exactly who you are. She knows exactly where you live. She knows exactly what college you attend. She knows exactly what none of us want to know. She knows exactly how much money you have in the bank. And when you find yourself in a court, she have put all of those things together. And it have already been determined whether you're going to be found guilty or not. Young people, I'm asking you tonight, what type of system do you want to inherit? What type of system do you want your children to be in? If you want your children to be in a great system, then you must stand up. You must help rewrite laws. You must write them and ask your congressmen and your senators to enforce and make these laws. Because if you don't, you could easily find yourself where I was. I hate to tell you, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Just because you're white don't mean you're exempt from going to prison. Never think that. Because one of my greatest joy is in this book. It was a white Klansman. A Klansman that had did one of the horrible crimes you could ever commit. And I am asked all the time about this particular chapter. I'm asked by people that read this book, how is it that you could befriend a Ku Klux Klansman? How could you befriend a man that went out and hung a man and just didn't hang him, but cut off his genitals? How could you befriend that type of human being? Remember I told you my mom said everybody deserved compassion. When Henry Francis Hayes came to death row, I didn't know him from anyone else. I struck up a conversation and we began to talk every day. We became friends over a period of 15 years. And everybody asked me, how is it? Well, I want to ask you something. We love to say that it takes a village to raise a child. Where was that village when this young man was being taught to hate? Where was that village when this young boy was going to school and all he knew was hatred? Well, I tell you where that takes a village came out. When Henry was tried, this village convicted. This village sentenced him to die. This village said, this would be a better world if you wasn't in it. So they sent Henry to death row. When I learned who Henry was, I asked myself, do it really make a difference? I thought about the scripture that I had quoted. Jesus said, as you stand at the altar, asking for forgiveness. Why didn't Henry deserve forgiveness? And as I showed Henry along with other inmates what love was, 15 years later, they gave Henry an execution date. All that week, they treat you like a human being. The same God that told you no for 14 years now will tell you yes. Whatever you ask them to do, they will go out and do it. It is something about dying that we will respect and we will love the man or the woman that is about to die. The God made sure that Henry had everything that he wanted. And then on the night of his execution, they asked Henry, what did he want to eat? And did he have any final words? Henry wanted an 8-ounce steak. When Henry ate that 8-ounce steak, they asked Henry, did he have any final words? And Henry said, all of my life, my mother, my father, my community taught me to hate. The very people that my community, my father, my mother taught me to hate are the people that taught me and showed me what love was all about.
Amen.
So tonight, as you execute me, I leave this world knowing what love feels like. And they executed my friend. And I wrote this book not per se to make any money, but God knows I hope I make a little bit. But I wrote this book to show you that humanity, compassion live in all of us. It is left up to us to show it. It is left up to us to tell someone to have a great day. This book is the second greatest book that ever been written. If you truly love someone and you want to give them a lifetime gift, this is the book. I promise you, your mother will call you once you get through reading it, and she will say, you really do love me, don't you? Because you gave me the best gift in the world. This book. I promise you that if you buy this book and don't like the book, John will refund you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you to do something for me. I would like for everyone in this building, for just one moment, to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, I want you to just see nothing. Just let it be empty. And I want you to imagine living in your dorm bathroom or your house, wherever. But imagine being in your bathroom. Imagine being in there for 30 minutes. Imagine you don't have a phone, you don't have books, you just can sit on the toilet. Imagine being in there for 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes. And if you can imagine a little bit further, imagine now being in there for 30 years. Imagine a newborn baby. How long it's going to take that newborn baby to reach 30. Imagine being in that bathroom for 30 long years. Now if you truly can imagine, and I mean truly imagine being in that bathroom for 30 years for a crime you didn't commit. I had to live in a cell the size of a bathroom for 30 long years. I want you to understand that you should never take your freedom for granted. Every day you wake up, you should tell yourself and no one else, you should say, thank you, Jesus. I am still alive. And if you find yourself anywhere other than in that bathroom, you should be more than thankful. I never thought that I could survive being in that cell for 30 years for a crime I didn't commit. I never thought that justice would put me in that cell for 30 years. But since I've been out of that cell, I've learned to appreciate everything that God blessed me with. I may not remember your name, but I promise you that wherever I go, whenever I pray, I will pray for you. And I will thank God for at least allowing me to meet you. What I went through, I'm hoping that no one will ever have to go through what I went through. We have a system that is broken. I stand here tonight to ask you, in whatever manner, whatever way you can, help me fix this broken system. Thank you so much.